أنا دكتور خالد وليد، ربان سفينة النجاة إلى شواطئ بكة القدس. I am Dr. Khaled Waleed, the captain of the ship of salvation to the shores of Beca, Jerusalem.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really embarking on quite a profound journey, taking a closer look at some foundational stories, the ones that shape our understanding of prophets and sacred history. And you've brought us a really fascinating collection of sources today, mostly articles from Dr. Khaled Waleed. His work, well, it seems to challenge quite a few long-held assumptions.
Yeah, our mission really in this deep dive is to pull out those key insights, those moments that might make you think, aha, and maybe completely reframe how you see these ancient narratives. It's kind of a shortcut to getting really well informed on this specific perspective. We'll be looking at some very precise linguistic points Dr. Waleed makes, geographical reevaluations he proposes, and even a resequencing of events based on his research that honestly might just offer you a completely fresh view. And we really want to make sure throughout this whole discussion that we give full credit to Dr. Khaled Waleed for what he presents as his extensive and frankly pioneering discoveries, all drawn from his deep linguistic and contextual dive into the Quran.
Absolutely. The material we have here, meticulously laid out by Dr. Khaled Waleed, it really does compel us to reconsider historical accounts that have been, well, deeply ingrained for centuries, haven't they? It's really about peeling back layers of interpretation, layers that have built up over time, to try and get to what Dr. Waleed presents as a precise, original meaning intended in the divine text. This deep dive, drawing on his work, should hopefully illuminate how specific words, when understood through the rigorous linguistic lens he applies, can unveil a picture that's, well, quite different. A different picture of figures like Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, and even the sacred locations themselves. His work, as he puts it in the sources you provided, really strives to provide unprecedented light and knowledge directly from the Quran.
Okay, so as you mentioned from the sources, Dr. Waleed dives right in, addressing what he sees as a fundamental problem that's clouded our understanding for, well, centuries. He talks about the influence of Israeliyat, which I understand means Jewish traditions and even pagan thought, on how sacred history gets interpreted. Could you maybe unpack that a bit? How does he think these external ideas might have shaped what we think we know?
Yeah, that's really his starting point, and it's crucial for everything that follows in his analysis. Dr. Waleed's work suggests these external, non-Quranic influences have led to some major misconceptions. And unfortunately, these misconceptions have become quite deeply embedded in many, let's say, prevailing narratives. For instance, he points to a very common traditional story that tends to almost completely exclude Ishmael from Abraham's direct prophetic line, often placing Isaac as the sole heir to the covenant. Dr. Waleed argues this is a significant distortion of the Quranic account itself, which, as we'll get into, based on his findings, actually gives Ishmael a very prominent role. And similarly, Dr. Waleed notes that sometimes the very existence of Jacob as a specific prophet of God gets sort of reduced, maybe to just an abstract idea, a name, rather than a real historical figure with a divine mission. He sees this as an attempt to kind of dilute the true prophetic lineage, something he strongly refutes.
And it goes further than that, doesn't it? He also talks about what he explicitly calls fabricated stories that have become common belief. Like many traditional accounts, often drawing from sources outside the Quran, they suggest Abraham had multiple wives, Sarah and Hagar, and each bore a different son, Ishmael and Isaac. Dr. Waleed directly challenges this. He believes he has clear Quranic evidence for just one mother. And even more starkly, he critiques that story, the really harsh one, about Ishmael and his mother being abandoned alone in a hellish desert, supposedly at God's command. Dr. Waleed points out very firmly that this abandonment story has absolutely zero mention, no backing whatsoever in the Quran itself. He calls it a pure fabrication. That's quite a strong claim.
It is, and this is where Dr. Waleed's critique really becomes sharp, and you could say controversial. He uses some strong language in his sources. He critically calls out individuals he labels Arab weavers for what he terms their priestly hypocrisy. He basically asserts they deliberately mixed up the true historical Macca, which, in his analysis, is Petra, in the east with Beca, the sacred city he identifies as Jerusalem, or Al-Quds. Their goal, he claims, was to invent these new false cinematic locations for what he pretty scathingly describes as their worst farcical plays, essentially constructing misleading narratives to fit their own agendas and lead people astray. Dr. Waleed emphasizes that God, in his mercy, provides clear, purifying words right there in the Quran, serving as a lifeline against what he sees as satanic lies and these idols of Israel. He believes these negative influences have sort of seeped into both Christian and Islamic social understanding over the centuries. He really positions his work as a direct, needed rebuttal to these deceptions he feels have pulled people away from the unadulterated truth.
Right. So for you listening, this really sets the stage. We're not just talking about historical details here. We're fundamentally questioning the lens, the framework through which these stories have often been presented for centuries. And this is the core, really, of Dr. Khaled Waleed's diligent work he describes as providing unprecedented clarity through his linguistic and contextual analysis of the Quran. His stated aim is to get back to the pure truth of the divine text without these external layers.
Exactly. And a cornerstone of Dr. Khaled Waleed's discoveries, and something that really underpins a lot of his reevaluation, is his critical distinction he makes between two locations, often sort of mushed together in traditional narratives, Macca and Beca. He argues this isn't just about geography, it's fundamental to correctly understanding the prophet's stories and their specific missions.
Okay, this is where it really challenges what many people assume. We generally think of Mecca, right, as this single, undisputed holy city. But Dr. Waleed introduces this really nuanced and frankly quite revolutionary idea, saying they're two completely separate places with different historical roles and even different spiritual statuses. So what defines Mecca in his view?
Yes, it is quite revolutionary. According to Dr. Waleed's detailed findings from his Quranic analysis, Macca is identified specifically with Petra, located to the east. This Macca, he explains, is connected in the Quran with the people of Ras, a term he links to certain groups among Bani Israel, specifically, he suggests, powerful merchants and political figures of that era. This eastern Macca, as Dr. Waleed describes it, had a different kind of significance than the truly sacred site linked directly to Abraham's main mission. He portrays it as a place that later became corrupted and ultimately lost its divine favor because of the transgressions of the people living there.
Okay, so Macca is Petra, associated with the people of Ras. And then there's Beca. This seems to be the real core of his geographical rethinking, the part that reorients our understanding of the primary sacred site.
Precisely. Dr. Waleed identifies Beca as the sacred city in Jerusalem, also known as Aqwds. This location, based on his analysis of the Quranic text, is presented as the actual house of God, Beit Allah, the sacred mosque, Masjid al-Ham, and the site where Abraham established his prayer place. He even connects the specific site to the current Dome of the Rock. Dr. Waleed clarifies that Abraham was specifically directed to and sort of crowned with the guardianship of this site Beca in Aqwds. This, he argues, makes it the true original Qibla, the direction of prayer for the early believers. This crucial distinction, which Dr. Waleed states he uncovered through his research, highlights what he terms Quranic spatio-temporal dynamics. Basically the idea that the Quran meticulously encodes the timing and location of events if you understand the precise meaning of the words used. So it's not just about two different place names, it's about two entirely different narratives, and as we'll explore a bit later, even two different kinds or levels of sacredness. This has profound implications, according to Dr. Waleed, for understanding the lineage and the specific missions assigned to the prophets.
He really emphasizes that this clarity helps correct centuries of what he sees as geographical and historical confusion.
Right. Okay. Now, to really grasp the depth of Dr. Khaled Waleed's insights, especially how he reconstructs the story of Abraham and his family, we need to understand these incredibly precise distinctions he makes. He talks about three concepts of divine giving: rizq, ataya, and hiyaba. They might sound similar, but he argues they're fundamentally different. He actually calls clarifying these unprecedented historical discoveries, suggesting their meanings were deliberately obscured. So what's the core difference he identifies between them?
Yes, understanding these three terms is absolutely fundamental to his whole framework. He argues they are often translated too broadly or even interchangeably, which loses the specific nuance the Quran intended. Getting these distinctions right, according to Dr. Waleed, is essential for truly understanding God's interaction with his creation, his prophets, and especially for unlocking the miraculous elements in these stories. So first, there's rizq. Dr. Waleed defines this as something material and physical in nature, refers specifically to consumable provisions, things essential for a basic day-to-day survival on Earth. Think food like fruits, livestock, and drink. It's the immediate sustenance God provides to keep us going. He uses Quran 2.60 as an illustration, the story where Moses strikes the rock and 12 springs gush out. That provided immediate consumable rizq sustenance for his people. It enabled them, as the verse says, to eat and drink from the provision of Allah. Okay, so rizq is about direct, often perishable things needed for physical life, a sort of continuous supply from God. Okay, second, we have ata.
Dr. Waleed describes this as non-consumable material that a person can acquire and possess. Things like money, buildings, land. This type of giving is distinct because it's not for immediate eating or drinking. It's for ownership, for investment, for management. It's a resource that tends to endure, unlike risk. And Dr. Waleed highlights that this area, aphora, is precisely where trial and temptation lie, because God holds us accountable for how we manage and use these provisions, these possessions. He points to Quran 9.58, the verse about people complaining over how charities are distributed, as an example. He says it shows how people's attitudes towards possessions reveal their character and whether they accept accountability for what they have. It's about stewardship, responsibility. And significantly, ata can be given to both believers and disbelievers as part of their trial.
Okay, risk is sustenance, ataz is possessions we're accountable for, but the one that seems most fascinating and really central for understanding the miracles we're discussing is hiba. This feels like the real linchpin in Dr. Khaled Waleed's new perspective on divine blessings. What makes hiba so unique in his analysis?
Absolutely, hiba is pivotal. Dr. Waleed explains hiba as God's mercy extended specifically to his righteous servants. It's not just a standard gift like risk or ata. He defines it as a special trusteeship given by God, allowing these righteous individuals to oversee others through divine truth. Crucially, he emphasizes that hiba signifies divine intervention. It's something granted outside the usual course of events, outside normal natural circumstances. It often bypasses natural limitations entirely. It breaks the expected pattern, signifying a unique, direct act of God's will and power. It's miraculous by definition in his framework. And Dr. Waleed goes into detail, outlining its types. He states a hiba can manifest as governance or great knowledge, so a divine empowerment to lead, rule wisely, or impart profound wisdom that comes directly from God, not just human learning. It can also appear as supportive souls in work. This means individuals who are divinely appointed to assist a prophet in their mission, like a companion, a helper, a family member raised to support them. He connects this to what he refers to as the sacred dualities of Ruh, spirit and nafs. A hiba of the spirit, he explains, shows up as scientific judgment and wisdom, deep intellectual and spiritual insight from God, whereas a hiba of the soul manifests as wealth or significantly supportive people, including children and family, who are given as a direct miraculous aid and extension of the person receiving the hiba. It's a gift of tangible human support, enabling the prophet's work. And he provides several really powerful examples from the Quran, all viewed through this precise lens of hiba, according to his research. For Abraham, who's central here, the hiba was his sons, Ishmael, Isaac, and Jacob. They were granted as extensions of his life and eternal message, an astonishing divine intervention given Abraham's advanced age and the fact he and his wife hadn't conceived for so long. For Moses, the hiba was his brother Aaron, who was made a prophet specifically to support Moses with his immense task. For David, Solomon was a mercy, a hiba, continuing the prophetic and kingly line. For Zechariah, it was his son John, whose birth was an undeniable miracle given his parents' age and his mother's condition, which we'll discuss.
And for Solomon himself, the hiba was great dominion, that vast, unparalleled kingdom bestowed as a divine gift. Dr. Waleed points to specific Quranic verses 14.39, 19.53, 3.3839, and 38.35, arguing they provide clear, undeniable proof of this unique, miraculous nature of hiba and these specific instances of it.
Wow. Okay. So for you, the listener, understanding this concept of hiba is absolutely crucial for grasping the miraculous dimension of these stories as Dr. Waleed presents them. It's not just a natural gift. It's a profound divine intervention that changes what's normally possible, breaking through natural limits like age or infertility. And it's this very concept that Dr. Khaled Waleed claims to have brought to unprecedented clarity through his research, which leads him to some pretty startling conclusions about Abraham's family, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Building directly on this concept of hiba and what he describes as the unprecedented clarity from his Quranic analysis, Dr. Khaled Waleed presents a really pivotal revelation. It concerns Abraham's marital status and, critically, the birth of his sons. He asserts unequivocally, backed by what he considers strong Quranic evidence, that Abraham had only one wife, and that this one wife was the sole mother of both Ishmael and Isaac. This flies directly in the face of much traditional interpretation.
Right. That is genuinely monumental. It directly challenges centuries of traditional stories. I mean, for many people listening, the narrative has always been Abraham having two wives, Sarah bearing Isaac and Hagar bearing Ishmael, often depicted as maybe a handmaiden. Dr. Waleed himself, in the sources, calls this finding a massive strike against traditionalists. He argues their narratives rely on misinterpretations or external stories, not the pure Quranic text. This really is a potential game changer for how people view Abraham's family.
It is a game changer in his framework, and he cites Quran 14.39 as his definitive proof. The verse has Abraham saying, "Praise be to Allah who has granted me in my old age Ishmael and Isaac." Dr. Waleed states this single verse definitively proves several key things simultaneously. First, that Ishmael was the elder son, mentioned first, and Isaac the younger. Second, and most critically, that both sons were born from the same mother. Why? Because the phrase, "in my old age," applies to the granting of both sons. This indicates in his analysis that they were both miraculous hivas granted to Abraham and his one-aged wife, who hadn't conceived for a very long time. This hiva bypassed her natural limitations, making their births a pure act of divine grace from the same single mother. He argues that if there had been two different mothers involved, the verse would surely have been phrased differently, perhaps indicating separate blessings or circumstances. Now, moving to the sons themselves, Dr. Khaled Waleed's research firmly establishes Ishmael as the elder son, and importantly, as the son designated as the sacrificed one, Babi. He points out that the Quran, when studied meticulously as he has done, consistently attributes specific, identifying qualities to Ishmael across different chapters. For example, Ishmael is described as patient, sabir, in Quran 21.85, highlighting his steadfastness. He's called truthful in promise, Siddiq Alad, and explicitly named a messenger, a prophet, Rasul Nabi, in Quran 19.54. He's also listed among the best, al-Akhir, in Quran 38.48. and consistently referred to using terms related to being knowledgeable, alim, and forbearing halim. These detailed, repeated descriptions, Dr. Waleed argues, aren't accidental. They are crucial identifiers pointing unequivocally to Ishmael as the forbearing boy mentioned later in the sacrifice narrative.
Right, so these descriptions aren't just character notes. Dr. Waleed sees them as vital clues for identifying Ishmael within the Quranic text itself, especially when it comes to that pivotal story, the sacrifice. That's a point where interpretations have traditionally varied a lot, hasn't it? How does his analysis resolve this?
It does resolve it quite decisively in his view. He points to the sequence in Quran Surah 37, verses 99 to 102. Abraham prays for a righteous child. In direct response, he is blessed with a forbearing boy. The Arabic is Gulam Halim. Then soon after, Abraham has the famous dream about sacrificing this son. Dr. Waleed emphasizes the sequence: the prayer, the specific answer, forbearing boy, and then the command related to that same boy. He argues this, combined with the consistent Quranic description of Ishmael elsewhere as knowledgeable and forbearing, definitively identifies Ishmael as the intended sacrifice. Both Abraham and Ishmael passed the test through their submission, and then, as a subsequent blessing, Isaac was granted as an additional gift, or nafila, reinforcing God's plan. Traditional views, especially in Judeo-Christian contexts, but also some Islamic ones, often name Isaac. But Dr. Waleed's linguistic analysis, focusing purely on the Quran's descriptions, leads him firmly to conclude it was Ishmael.
And what's really interesting there is how Dr. Waleed's reading connects Ishmael's life directly and continuously with Abraham's mission. He brought up Quran 2.127, where Abraham and Ishmael are together raising the foundations of the house. That seems to directly contradict any narrative of long separation or abandonment.
It's exactly. Dr. Waleed explicitly states that Ishmael described with all those positive attributes, knowledgeable, forbearing, patient, truthful, good servant, worked right alongside his father Abraham in raising the foundations of the house. And critically, he identifies this house with Beca, Jerusalem, based on his geographical analysis. This implies a continuous collaborative presence. It completely debunks, in his view, the traditional idea that Ishmael was sent away or abandoned somewhere else. He also points to the phrase in the sacrifice story, when he reached with him the age of exertion, Quran 37.102. Dr. Waleed interprets this to mean Ishmael was old enough to actively work alongside Abraham, implying he hadn't really left his father's side up until that point of shared demanding work and testing. This continuous companionship and partnership in fulfilling God's command is a really key element in Dr. Waleed's reconstruction of their relationship. Now, while Ishmael was that initial foundational hiba given to Abraham in his old age, Isaac and Jacob were then granted subsequently as nafila. The word means an additional sort of supererogatory gift from God.
This is stated quite clearly, he notes, in Quran 21.72, and we gave him Isaac and Jacob as a supererogatory gift, nafila, and all of them we made righteous. This highlights the continuation and the expansion of divine grace through Abraham's line. It shows God's blessings just kept flowing.
So it's less about a competition between the sons or one replacing the other, and more about an unfolding divine plan, an expansion of God's blessings in Abraham's legacy with different roles, like a tapestry.
Precisely. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Dr. Waleed clarifies that Isaac and Jacob were specifically destined for the prophetic mission within Palestine, the Blessed Land. Their lineage, their purpose, was intrinsically tied to establishing and carrying the divine message within that specific geographical area. He notes that the Quran, in its wisdom, doesn't always mention Ishmael together with Isaac and Jacob. Dr. Waleed explains this isn't an omission or downgrading, but reflects their different designated mission fields. Ishmael's mission, according to Dr. Waleed's meticulous textual discoveries, was located in the east specifically. He identifies it with Midian, east of the Dead Sea. He sees this as marking the beginning of the Nabateans in the future. Meanwhile, Isaac and Jacob were tasked with carrying the prophetic line forward in Palestine, ensuring the continuation of Abraham's core message in that specific blessed region. This differentiation of roles in geography is another key finding from his research.
And this leads to a really crucial conclusion for understanding the lineage, doesn't it? Especially concerning the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Dr. Waleed concludes through this analysis that the Prophet Muhammad's lineage extends from Abraham's progeny specifically through the descendants of Jacob, who were the inhabitants of the blessed land of Palestine. So this provides, in his view, a clear, unified, and pure lineage, firmly rooting the Prophet Muhammad within this sacred chain, challenging some other traditional genealogical accounts, and strongly linking him back to Abraham's original family and the mission centered in that blessed land.
Yes, that connection back through Jacob and Palestine is a very significant outcome of his overall analysis of the lineages and missions.
Okay, so we've talked about Hiba, the miraculous gift. What does all this mean for understanding how these miraculous births happened? Particularly Abraham's sons, born so late in life, and also John the Baptist. Dr. Khaled Waleed seems to have uncovered another layer of linguistic precision here, distinguishing between different Quranic terms for infertility. Terms, he says, have been deliberately concealed or misunderstood. He argues understanding these is fundamental.
Yes, this is another really crucial area of what Dr. Waleed presents as his unprecedented discoveries. He believes he's clarifying terms related to conception and fertility that have been confused for centuries. Getting these right, he argues, unlocks deeper layers of meaning about the nature of God's intervention in the Quran. He defines them with what he considers almost scientific precision, based on the Quran's own consistent usage. Okay, so first, he defines al-ajuz. This simply means an old woman, someone who has reached the age of al-ajaz, which he equates with menopause. This happens, according to the medical understanding he references in his sources, when the menstrual cycle stops for a full year, usually somewhere between the 40s and 50s. At this point, scientifically speaking, she becomes akim. This he defines specifically as sterile due to the natural end of reproductive time. It's a permanent state caused by age. Now contrast that with al-akim. He defines this as primary infertility, but with a crucial distinction. It describes a woman whose fertile land, her potential, is present. Her eggs are viable, but the water, the male fluid, cannot reach the eggs. Importantly, without any underlying physiological defect in her system itself. This inability to conceive happens before menopause during her natural fertile years. It's like a blockage, he explained, but not an organic one. This condition, al-akir, Dr. Waleed suggests, might normally require something like surgical intervention today. Or, in the divine context, it requires a direct divine intervention, a hiba, to essentially repair or remove that blockage. He points directly to Zechariah's wife. The Quran explicitly describes her as Akir in Surah 19 and Surah 3. Dr. Waleed interprets this to mean she had this specific kind of non-organic blockage during her fertile years, which God then repaired miraculously through a hiba, allowing her to conceive John. This distinction is vital. Akim is sterility due to age, natural end. Akir is infertility due to a block during fertile years. Potentially fixable or requires hiba.
That distinction is incredibly important, isn't it? It really clarifies why Abraham's wife is described specifically as ajuz akim, old and sterile menopausal in Quran 51.29. That phrase has often just been translated loosely as barren, losing this crucial nuance Dr. Waleed highlights.
Precisely. Dr. Waleed's findings clarify that Abraham's wife had reached the day of Akim, the natural end of her reproductive cycle due to old age, menopause. She was naturally sterile by that point. Yet God's hiba intervened. It broke, as Dr. Waleed puts it, this barrier of time, allowing her to conceive first Ishmael and later Isaac after she had already entered this natural state of sterility, akim. This, he argues, is further confirmation that she was the same mother for both sons. Why? Because the divine intervention, the hiba, was specific to her condition of being ajuz akim. It demonstrates God's power over these natural temporal limitations. And interestingly, Dr. Waleed also notes his finding that Abraham himself was initially akim, sterile, or unable to conceive in his youth. He suggests Abraham also required a divine intervention, a hiba, to become capable of fathering children at all. This just highlights the extraordinary, multifaceted nature of the divine intervention involved in the births of both Ishmael and Isaac to these aged parents. And Dr. Waleed doesn't stop there. He extends these precise definitions of akir and akim beyond just human reproduction. He sees it as illustrating God's unprecedented light and knowledge woven into the Quran's language, describing various phenomena, natural processes, divine judgment, even geography. For example, the term Yam Akim, literally Day of Akim, used in Quran 22.55. Dr. Waleed interprets this as referring to a day where time effectively stops, leaving no sequence, no further events. An analogy he suggests is the Day of Judgment, signifying a finality, an end to linear time for creation. Similarly, Riakim, the Akim wind, in Quran 51.41. He describes this as a devastating wind that leaves absolutely no trace, signifying the complete cessation of time for those it affects, leading to their total destruction, the termination of their temporal existence. These applications, he argues, reinforce the core meaning of Akim as a permanent, time-stopping cessation. It's a powerful linguistic thread he traces through the Quran.
And he even applies these terms geographically, connecting back to Macca and Beca. That shows incredible consistency in the language if his analysis holds. How does he apply akir and ak to these locations?
Yes, this is where it gets quite complex, but also reveals deeper layers of historical and theological meaning in his interpretation. Let's try to simplify his idea. Think of Akim like a permanent natural end state, like a riverbed that is naturally dried up over geological time barren. Life can't return without a direct miracle breaking that natural state. And think of Akir as more like a temporary, maybe even man-made blockage, like a dam stopping a river's flow. It's an intervention or obstruction that could potentially be reversed or removed. Now apply that to the locations he identified. Dr. Waleed connects Akir, the temporary halt, the reversible state, to the forbidden or muharram status he assigns to places near Mecca Petra, like the disabled well he locates in Wadi Araba. This signifies a prohibition or a lack of blessing that could theoretically be lifted. He links it to the story of Saleh's she-camel, where the people prevented access to the water, metaphorically making the land a kakir, temporarily blocking its blessing due to human sin. It implies a state God could change if he willed, or if the cause was removed. Conversely, Al-Akim, the permanent cessation, needing divine intervention to overcome, he links to the sacred boundaries, the haram of Beca, Jerusalem. This implies a higher, more intrinsic sanctity, a place where natural processes like conception or blessings might reach a natural akim state due to the passage of time, like Abraham's wife becoming Akim. But crucially, God can intervene with a hibah to transcend those natural limits, breaking the barrier of time to bring forth life or blessing supernaturally. It speaks to a profound natural sanctity that only God's direct will can override. Now, Dr. Waleed takes this even further, using it to interpret divine judgment, which is quite striking. He concludes, based on this linguistic distinction, that God permanently crippled, made Akir the idolaters of Mecca Petra, whom he identifies as specific groups of Bani Israel, the Majuj, from his mercy due to their severe crimes. He asserts God shows them no regard, making their site, Mecca Petra, effectively muharram, or forbidden in that context, a state resulting from their actions but potentially reversible only by God. However, he contrasts this with God's stance towards other disbelievers among Bani Israel, whom he labels Yajuj. He suggests God still holds out hope they might return from their oppression by entering Beca, Jerusalem. He describes Beca, Jerusalem as haram, inherently sacred but not eternally forbidden in the same way. This means, in his view, God can lift the light and energy of Beca's sanctuary when these people leave their oppression, allowing life and blessing to return, even if the land or its people had reached a state of ajez, or inability. It's a complex theological point, differentiating between a divinely imposed consequence, Akir state on Mecca Petra's people, and the inherent sanctity of Beca, Akir state which God can override with hibah, all stemming from these precise linguistic distinctions Dr. Khaled Waleed identifies.
That really does reveal a profound layer of meaning. It demonstrates, if Dr. Khaled Waleed's insights are accurate, how precisely God's language in the Quran describes everything from natural laws and miracles to his judgment across different times, places, and peoples. It's a powerful testament to the potential linguistic depth and consistency of the Quran, showing how these terms carry such specific and far-reaching implications in his analysis.
And this leads Dr. Khaled Waleed to argue passionately, based on his findings, for adhering strictly to what he sees as the Quran's pure, unadulterated guidance. He warns very emphatically in his writings against following what he calls imams of misguidance. He claims these figures perpetuate lies derived from satanic methodologies and these idols of Israel. These influences, he asserts, have infiltrated and corrupted both Christian and Islamic social structures over the centuries, leading believers away from the original truth. He clearly positions his own meticulous work as a strong, necessary rebuttal to these deceptions, aiming to restore clarity and purity to how the divine message is understood.
So for Dr. Waleed, this isn't just about correcting historical facts or debating linguistic points in an academic sense. It's fundamentally a callback to a purer understanding of faith itself. It seems centered on Abraham's core principle that unwavering monotheism, the complete submission to God alone.
Precisely. That's the absolute bedrock. Dr. Waleed consistently highlights Abraham's unwavering monotheism as the ultimate model. He frequently quotes Quran 3.67. Abraham was not a Jew nor a Christian, but he's a Hanif, inclined to truth, a Muslim, one who submits, and he was not of the idolaters. This foundational principle, he argues, stands in sharp contrast to what he terms the idolatrous Israel and their descendants, whom he believes rejected God's true message and introduced corruptions and idolatry. He urges believers, based on his findings, to turn their faces toward Abraham's original, fixed Qibla, the direction of prayer, which he identifies as being in Beca, Jerusalem. He sees this act as a return to the pure, unadulterated faith that Abraham himself embodied. His work, as he presents it, is intended as a divine light, guiding people away from error and back towards this pristine original truth, reconnecting humanity with the core message.
Okay, this has been an incredibly dense and thought-provoking deep dive. To try and bring it all together, let's summarize the key transformative findings that Dr. Khaled Waleed presents in his dedicated research discoveries he claims have been obscured or twisted for centuries. First, that concept of hiba. It's not just any gift. It's God's miraculous, often unexpected intervention, totally distinct from everyday sustenance, risk, or acquired possessions, atika. It signifies a direct divine act that bypasses normal circumstances, breaking natural laws like those of age or fertility.
Exactly. Second, Dr. Waleed's analysis leads him to conclude Abraham had only one wife. She miraculously conceived Ishmael first, a hiba that naturally became Aquim, sterile due to old age menopause, and then, through another specific hiba, gave birth to Isaac and Jacob. This underscores her singular role as mother to all three, enabled by repeated divine interventions.
And crucially, flowing from that, Ishmael and Isaac are therefore confirmed, in his view, as sons of the same mother. This directly refutes those widespread traditional narratives suggesting different mothers, a point Dr. Waleed considers a fatal blow to accounts based on external, non-Quranic sources.
Fourth, the identity of Ishmael as the sacrificed son, the Dabi, is confirmed decisively, according to Dr. Waleed's comprehensive analysis of the Quranic verses. He bases this on the consistent descriptions of the forbearing boy and the clear sequence of events laid out in Surah 37.
Fifth, his work clarifies that it was Jacob who resided in that valley without cultivation near Mecca Petra, Wadi Araba, not Ishmael as sometimes assumed. This brings, he argues, unprecedented geographical precision to understanding the story of Joseph and his family.
Sixth, both Ishmael and Isaac were themselves divine hibas. They were miraculous gifts to parents who, by natural standards due to advanced age and prior infertility, shouldn't have been able to conceive. Their births were pure miracles, showcasing God's power.
Seventh, the specific mission of Isaac and Jacob was centered on establishing and continuing the prophetic message in Palestine. This highlights their distinct, God-ordained role in that blessed land and for its people.
Eighth, conversely, Ishmael's mission field was designated in the east, specifically Midian, east of the Dead Sea. Dr. Waleed sees this marking the origins of the Nabateans. This delineates separate but equally vital prophetic spheres for Abraham's sons and their descendants.
And finally, perhaps most unifying in his framework, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is confirmed as an extension of the pure Abrahamic lineage coming through the descendants of Jacob, who were the true inhabitants of the blessed land of Palestine. This solidifies the Prophet's connection back to the sacred, purified line and its original monotheistic core message, bypassing other lineages.
These are indeed what Dr. Khaled Waleed terms his unprecedented discoveries. Illuminated, he believes, by God's grace and his own diligent linguistic and contextual work, they aim to reveal the magnificent wisdom and beauty of the Quran's words, providing a clear light to guide away from historical error and towards profound original truth. It really underscores the power he finds in linguistic precision for unlocking these deeper meanings.
Wow. Okay. That was an absolutely transformative deep dive. We've really seen how Dr. Khaled Waleed's meticulous work, which is so deeply rooted in the precise language of the Quran and his unique understanding of its terms, can potentially resequence and re-illuminate these foundational stories that have shaped so much history and faith. It really pushes us to think about moving beyond just inherited assumptions and narrative back towards what he presents as the sheer stunning clarity within the text itself. It's clear his contributions offer a very different perspective.
Absolutely. This discussion, drawing heavily on Dr. Waleed's groundbreaking insights, it really offers a powerful lesson, doesn't it? That true, authentic understanding, or at least one path to it, might require seriously questioning what we've inherited, even if it feels deeply ingrained. And it requires returning to the original source, in this case the Quran, with a renewed, intense focus on precise linguistic detail in the original context. It certainly reveals that there might always be more to learn, deeper truths to uncover, if we approach sacred texts with that kind of open mind and commitment to precision.
So for you, our curious listener, maybe here's a final provocative thought to mull over. If, as Dr. Khaled Waleed argues, such profound and detailed distinctions about foundational religious narratives, things like the identity of the sacrificed son, the number of Abraham's wives, the precise meaning of fertility terms could have been obscured or misinterpreted for centuries, what other areas of knowledge, maybe even in your own life or understanding, might benefit from a similar kind of deep dive, a closer, more precise linguistic and contextual analysis, questioning assumptions? Keep digging, keep questioning, and keep seeking that pure, illuminating truth, whatever that means for you. Until next time on The Deep Dive.
أنا دكتور خالد وليد ربان سفينة النجاة إلى شواطئ بكة القدس. I am Dr. Khaled Waleed, the captain of the ship of salvation to the shores of Beca, Jerusalem.